Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's video. My name is Angel DeSantis. It's my first time remembering in a month, so please click like and subscribe, and I will link my religious trauma course below. Thank you for being here. This week's question was given to me by somebody named Julie, who's lovely. Thank you for the question. And it has to do with the constant second guessing of yourself when you decide that you want to do something. And even before you have time to fully formulate the thought of, I want to do this, something comes through and just tells you to stop, and it's not important, and you're not important, and why were you thinking this? And that is something that is not exclusive to growing up into a religiously traumatic environment, but it is incredibly common around for people who have grown up around that really intense religious environment. So I want to just talk about that. There is construction above me, so if you hear a bunch of like random noise, that's what it is, but hopefully I can cut that. But first I wanted to start by saying that that's not necessarily a religious thing, it's more of a confidence thing. Where it becomes a religiously abusive thing is when they use God to override your own inner voice. And what I mean by that is we all have a seed. We all have our own unique imprint, and we all have something that we have to give to the world. We have our own thoughts. We have our own confidence. We come to the world with that. But when you grow up in a religiously abusive environment, they start to override your identity with God's identity. And they say, well, what would God want? What would God do? What would Jesus do? I'm sure you've heard that. And so you start to second guess your seed, like yourself, and you start to override that with, does God want me to do this? Do my parents or my pastor or my teacher or whoever, would they approve of this thing? Instead of thinking, I want to do this thing, let me go do it. And so once you're out of that environment, as you're trying to heal, you might think, well, I'm no longer in that environment. I don't need to answer to these people anymore, so I don't need to take that into consideration. However, your brain pattern is already set up to derail your own thought. And so that is the dilemma, is not being able to kind of have a thought for yourself or be able to concentrate on bringing the things to life that you want to bring to life. And believe me, I have struggled with this and continue to struggle. But that's the dilemma, is that feeling that you can't get past this barrier. You really, truly want to do this thing, but you cannot bring it to life because there's something that is blocking you and you can't get through it. That's the dilemma. And then we found, obviously, the root of the issue is that you are not trained to bring yourself to life. You are trained to play subservience to someone else telling you how to live your life. And so we have the root, we have the issue. Now let's talk about remedy. So this is all, again, not a therapist. This is just personal experience, but personal experience matters, which is why you find, hopefully, you find what I share helpful, because I'm sharing my personal experience. And if you feel like it is helpful, just know that if you find my personal experience useful, it's very likely somebody will find your personal experience useful. So plant that in your mind, water that seed. But let's talk about the moving past that. And in order to move past that mindset, the first thing you need to do is, it sounds super corny, but you have to believe yourself. And I didn't say believe in yourself. I said believe yourself. Because what that setup does is it derails your own intuition, your own internal voice, and your own wisdom, which you do have. And so in order to start listening to it, you have to believe what you are saying. So there is you. Let's just go through this concept real quick. There's you. You're watching me. And there's a part of you that is judging what I'm saying that is not you. Part of you is just watching me. And then part of you is kind of judging the things that I say and thinking, is that true? What is she saying? Did she mean all of that? And I don't mean judging in a bad way at all. Plus, judging is good, so judge away. But there are different parts of you, and they can communicate with each other, right? For example, your body can be like, I'm hungry. And then there's the you that decides whether or not to feed it. So you are made up of a lot of different parts. And what growing up in a traumatic environment, and particularly a religiously traumatic environment, The damage that it does is it railroads your ability to communicate within yourself. So if there's a part of you that says, I'm in pain, you overwrite it with like, well, Jesus died for you, so should you really be feeling pain? Not really. Get over it. And so the part of you that says, hey, I'm in pain gets like totally run through by the train track of God being like, no, God's the most important thing. And if you grew up in that environment, you will have suppressed yourself over and over and over again. So the remedy to healing from that, or being able to bring things to life in yourself, is to believe yourself. And I think one of the most obvious ways to talk about this is to think about a relationship, an abusive relationship, where the person wants to leave, but they can't. And I think we've all been in this situation before where you really, really want to get out of the situation, but there is a part of you that cannot leave. And maybe we've all experienced this with the religious community, or with our parents, or with our siblings, or maybe romantic relationships. But there is a dynamic. And within that dynamic, it's not just you and the person that you're trying to leave. There's all your inner selves at war. Because you being unable to leave, there is some part of you that doesn't know how to operate outside of the dynamic. Even if it's an abusive dynamic, you don't know how to operate outside of it, so you stay in it because you think known chaos is better than unknown chaos. And we don't like chaos, first of all. And why would we choose unknown chaos? At least you know that you can survive the known chaos. And so some part of us chooses to stay because it's what we know, and we already know how to survive it. So in order to start walking out, you have to start believing the parts of yourself that say, hey, I'm in pain and I don't want this. And if you've never believed yourself before, it'll be a really difficult task, because if you believe it, then you have to take the next step of, you know what? I believe you, you're in pain, let's do something about it. And then it becomes conscious. Then you either make the conscious decision to stay in pain, or you make the equally painful decision to remove yourself from the situation and start a new life, or start a new version of you. A version of you where you take all parts of you into consideration and you begin to believe yourself. So in order to move yourself forward in the situation, it is so important to do things that allow you to believe yourself. So to believe the message that you are hearing from yourself. So if part of you says, hey, I really want to try this activity, the part that railroads it right away is the part of you that was not created by you. It was the part that is used to shutting parts of yourself down, because that's how the religious community thrives, is oppression of the individual self. So in order for you to start moving forward and moving past the barriers that you can't feel, that you feel that you can't get past, it's important to believe you. How do you feel? What are you feeling? What do you want to do? And then believe that. And then cater to it. And these are all different steps. And it might sound, it sometimes can feel like, well, it's so simple, right? Like, decide to do a thing, do it. But there are a lot of mental barriers that are set up to block you, not the least of which is the idea that if you want to do something for yourself, it's selfish, and wouldn't you be better off doing something for someone else? But again, it's that same overarching message that you don't matter, your wants and needs don't matter at all, and shouldn't you be doing something else anyway, and what a bad idea that you had. As opposed to the healing is believing yourself that you want to do this. All right, let's go do this. And so I want to give you a task, which is to ask yourself, what do you want to do, or what do you want to accomplish, or what barrier do you want to get over? Take a moment, listen to what yourself has to say, and then believe yourself. You're not wrong. There is something that you come into this world with that is unique to you, and that is important, and that is worth discovering. So the things that you want to do matter, not just the things that you want to do like in the large scope of your life and the legacy you want to leave. Yes, those are important, but what do you want to do this evening? What do you want to have for lunch? All of those things matter because they are catering to that part of you that wants to be heard. And if you grew up in a religiously abusive environment, you may never have listened to yourself. You may never have acknowledged that you have wants. And your wants are important because they are yours and you are important. And so when people ask me, like, how did you get to be this person? How did you get to be confident? How did you get to this or that? I listen to myself and I believe me. And then I take action that proves that I believe me. So that was the issue. That was where it came from. And then the remedy is believing yourself and then taking action that shows that you believe yourself. So back to the whole question that Julie posed of how do I move myself forward? What do you want? How do you want to move yourself forward? And then believe your answer, because you will have been told over and over again that you are not special, that you don't deserve a place in this life unless you're serving God, and that what you have to say and what you have to think is useless. And after decades of that conditioning, it's really difficult to take your subconscious out of that. But it begins by believing yourself and then taking action to prove that you believe in yourself. There is not a part of you that is unimportant. So I encourage you, your task is to ask yourself a question about what you want, and then believe yourself, and then take an action that proves that you believe yourself. So hopefully this was helpful. If you find your task and you do the thing, tell me about it. I want to know. I feel like I share a lot, and I would like to hear from you. I want to know what you're doing. But thank you for being here. I know this is hard work. Bravo, as always. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.